Welcome to the Levity Floatcast. Whether this is your first listen or you're floating through the archives, we appreciate you being here with us. Today we talk with Chad Medved, the host of one of Pittsburgh's favorite podcasts, I'll Call You Right Back. So sit back, relax, and let's floatcast.
How they are going to do, like some random people, like I for instance, I interviewed a guy, I wanted to talk to a grave digger, someone who dug graves. So I talked to this dude, and I knew that he was going to be super quiet. Didn't have he had social media, never used it. And I was like, this dude is not going to be talkative. I know that for a fact. He started working at this place when he was 14 and he was 30. So he's been doing it for 16 years. He's been digging people's graves. So now he lives on the cemetery with his dog. So I was like, I prepared myself. I knew the dude was going to be super quiet. And I just kind of like, I smother people with a welcoming feeling, like I knew that, I'll read people. I saw this dude was wearing a Real Tree hoodie and was wearing some camo. I was like, what do? Do you like hunt while you're on there? And that kind of will lead you on to a different path. I kind of just feel people out. Everyone's so different.
Okay, cool. Yeah, how was that experience though with the gravedigger? Like,
it was fantastic. Honestly, dude, like the weirdest people are the best conversations. Like, my favorite podcast out of 136 people has been a guy who his name's Kevin Drobish. He's the head of Pittsburgh Institute of Mortuary Science. So he like heads up the reconstructive classes at Pittsburgh Institute of Mortuary Science. So like if someone, like dies a violent death and their body is mangled in some way, as gruesome as it is,
Jesus.
Like he is teaching students on how to rebuild these people. And I was like, and actually Brandon from One Up is the one who told me about this dude. He was him and Greg told me about this dude. Said that he was like an old skate rat. So this guy he was 31 up until 31. All he did was odd jobs, and he was a musician. And he went to a funeral, and it was for like his grandmother, and someone. He said that the funeral director didn't take as much care as he would have hoped, and it kind of just like changed his whole life. And he kind of just like shifted his whole life to wanting to, go to school to be a funeral director and learn how to help preserve people's loved ones. And he became so infatuated with it that he ends up, heading the school now. He is a bigwig there, but it was my favorite episode out of all of them. And all we did was talk about, he did 1,300 autopsies. He's worked under Cyril Wecht. And it's like, dude, you got to be ready for people to not want to, not everyone wants to talk.
yeah, it's crazy though how like that guy could have such a negative experience that affected his life in such a positive way. I'm curious, between him and the gravedigger, what were their perspectives on death? Because they got to look at things differently.
Kevin Drobish had a different outlook on death. He kind of came to the point of that, everyone's going to die. And he finds honor in being able to be trusted with someone's loved one to, take care of them and, give them the respect and make them, look as best as they can for their family. And like, that's kind of his outlook for it. And then the gravedigger guy, I don't know if he had that necessarily outlook. He was kind of just like, he fell into that job through a family member. Like his uncle worked there. And whenever he was 14, he just started working there. And he just never left. And I think that his outlook was he likes to, kind of be by himself. He wants to kind of not be, bothered really. And I don't know if he has any like super philosophical, feelings about, burying people. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. His outlook is kind of like, I'm going to go dig this hole. I'll go fix this grave. I'll go do this and I'll go do that. But they were both cool. It was refreshing to hear both ends of it.
Yeah, Kevin sounds like he kind of, obviously the experience affected him, but it sounds like he kind of draws from some like Egyptian mentality a little bit. because like the way he wants to preserve sounds very like, you know how they like bury them with gold and like food and things like that.
Yeah,
I think that's so interesting.
It's the biggest form of respect that you could have is being able to, you know, for being trusted to do that for someone. Like that's like I feel that's like the biggest form of respect that you could be given is like, you know, my mother, my father, my brother, sister, wife, like they passed away, and like I trust you to take care of them and to not take advantage of them and not to, you know, do, you know, wrong things to them, because like I'm sure that there's, you know, sketchy ass people that do shit like that. But, you know, it's a different level of respect, and I feel that that's a good way to put it, though. I never thought about, like, the Egyptian values and, like, being, you know, they used to bury cats with, like, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of, like, jewels and gold, and it's that's a good way to think about that. I'm going to have to ask him about that next time I talk to him.
Yo, please let me know.
I will.
Oh, man.
Recording, so whenever.
We're good? Yeah. We're good. All right, man. Do you want to do the mailbag?
Look at it. So, did I pass it? So today's mailbag question comes from Brittany B. And she says, I floated many times and feel great physically after my sessions, but sometimes it takes a while to slow my thoughts and calm my mind. Do you have any suggestions to help with the racing mind? Since you floated before, do you have any suggestions?
I think that, you know, whenever I first hit him up to do a float, I was nervous about it just because, like, you know, I've been a cult follower of Rogan since like the beginning, and he is the reason that I feel that, you know, 80% of the people that know about float tanks, you know about them, like. And I, over the years, have heard him talk about it numerous times over and over and over again. And you always hear him say, like, you know, you could literally just start tripping balls in there. And I'm like, God, like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. And I kind of, you know, felt that I was prepared a little bit more just because of listening to him explain, like, what he does and, like, kind of how he goes about doing it and, like, how to prepare for it and, like, kind of what you do as far as, like, breathing and, you know, trying to catch your breath and kind of, you know, clear your mind. So whenever I first came in, I was, like, super nervous. I was like, you know, like, how am I going to do this? I was honestly nervous about falling asleep. You know, like, I could fall asleep anywhere. So I was like, I don't want to just get in there and immediately fall asleep. Mm-hmm. So I noticed that whenever I first got in, my main goal was to start kind of catching my breathing and, like, kind of being conscious of my breaths, because he says that's the most important thing you could do. Yeah. And in the beginning, I don't even know how long it was because you can't see a clock or anything. I would say, like, maybe 10, 15 minutes. It was basically me just in my head kind of just counting my breaths, 5 in, 5 out, 5 in, 5 out. And then once I kind of got the hang of, you know, breathing and feeling it, I just had this rush of, you know, an overwhelming feeling of, like, thoughts and, you know, what to do and how to fix this problem and how to fix that problem. And, you know, my best way to explain it to, you know, anyone else that has asked me about this is, like, you know, whenever I first went in there, I felt like my brain was almost like a kid's room that was just, like, dirty, like toys everywhere, just, like, everything was all messed up. And me getting in the tank almost was like me cleaning up the room and being able to organize things. And all them toys that are strewn all over the floor are different problems that I have and different things that I'm worried about and things that I want to do. And the floating, like, kind of gave me a chance to, you know, kind of say, you know, I'm going to pick up all these pieces and put them away, and I'm going to pick up all these pieces and put these away, and I'm going to put this over there. And, you know, at the end, I don't know if I felt that whole rush of, you know, thoughts, you know, like I kind of felt at peace after I got out of that tank. Like I honestly felt like I was never more, you know, relaxed whenever I got out of that tank. The only time I feel like that now is, like, after I do, like, hot yoga. Like, I've been getting heavy into hot yoga, and
it's a great time.
Oh, it's so great. And after I get out of that, like I kind of have a similar feeling. Like it's like it gives me an excuse to have an hour to, you know, kind of just breathe and put away all that shit that's strewn around my head. I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to swear on here.
No,
No,
you're
no.
good. Yeah, yeah.
The analogy though of the little kid's room is amazing, but I love the contrast between like floating and yoga, how they can produce the same feeling, but one is just chill, you know, you're laying, you don't feel like you're doing anything, and then the other is actually pushing you to the extreme. Because I've done yoga and I've done hot yoga, and like you come out dripping, boy, from your hot yoga. It's totally
super
different.
Intense. Like it's way more intense than I would have ever thought. And you know, that's the only other time that I felt that I could like kind of almost get to where I am after I'm done floating. And I think that I mean, I bet everyone has different experiences, but I don't know if I necessarily had like the rush of like an overwhelming feeling of like thoughts.
What do you do, Troy? If you get in and you're stressed and the mind's racing, what are some steps you take?
It's very similar. I just focus on my breath, and I mean, I do that as soon as I get in. I just start breathing, and you know, for listeners who have heard previous episodes, you know, I'm into meditation. It's something I try and do daily as is. So that's how I go about it. And then kind of like Chad was saying, how like he heard, you know, you could start tripping. When I first floated, I went in wanting that experience. I'm like, I'm trying to astral project. I'm seeing the universe today, boy. And that didn't happen. And I think more than I'd like to honestly admit, I think I have expectations too often. And so now when I go into experiences like this, but specifically floating, I'm just like, this is going to be an hour, and it's going to be different from every other hour that I've ever done.
For sure.
And what happens, happens. So I just breathe and kind of let it go.
Right on, man. Like both of you said, that was spot. Like the breathing, as soon as for me, when I get in there, I can tell how stressed I am with how choppy my breathing is. It's the first thing you hear. And I do like a triangle breathing, 3 in, hold it for 3 and 3 out, and just keep working that just to center. And that was a great analogy, man. Cleaning up the kid's room.
Thanks.
It's spot on. I mean, and it's not until you get in that room do you notice how fucked up things are.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. It's like my and like you were saying, it's like, you know, one thing between yoga and then floating is like, you know, one thing you're like, you know, pushing yourself, it's physically demanding, and then the other you're just floating. And it's almost like I'm almost more out of breath whenever I was floating. It's like once I'm like trying to be conscious of my breathing, I almost was like hyperventilating the first time I got in that tank. And like I almost felt like I wasn't going to be able to, you know, get control of my breath, because like, you know, I would start like breathing heavy, and like I felt like that I wasn't able to like, you know, get that rhythm of 5 in, 5 out, and that like vinyasa breath. And after you like kind of think about it a little bit more, and you're kind of like conscious of it, I was able to kind of get it under control. And after you do that, you start to like slip into like a state, and like
It's like a trance.
yeah, dude, because in the beginning I didn't know, like I was saying, like I didn't know if I was going to like fall asleep in there, or if I was going to like, I didn't know how I was going to respond to it. But the breath kind of like in the first 10-15 minutes, whatever it was, of me trying to like, you know, almost like of me like trying to run after that like train. That's what it felt like. It was like my breath was just like a runaway train, and I was just trying to catch up to it. But once I like got there and I was able to be there, I was able to like, you know, kind of, you know, it was almost like time started to fast forward. It was like, you know, before I knew it, the lights came on and the music started to, you know, fade in. And it was pretty cool to like feel that like, you know, sort of like, you know, the difference in time.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, really, I'm just excited to get you in the tank again, man. As I'm sitting here listening to your description, like,
I'm excited.
I think it's with all that you do, and I mean, we haven't even hopped in yet, but before we get to talk about your podcast, you started making bread.
I did. I became a pandemic baker.
Hell yeah, picked up a new hobby.
I did. That and biking. Pretty much the most generic hobbies that everyone in the pandemic has done.
Pause. You have an excuse now to make that bread because you can go work it off.
I know, that's true. That's true.
Always thinking. Always thinking
a step ahead. But yeah, dude, I started to bake. I just, I always wanted to start to bake, and I never really had I guess I had time, but I just never had a reason to kind of dive into it. But I was, laid off like half of, America, and I wanted to, kind of keep myself doing new things. And I picked up a book and started watching some videos and created a sourdough starter. And,
Nice.
And I kind of went crazy heavy into bread. I wanted to perfect it to the best possible loaves that I could put out. And I was super proud of it. Like I ended up baking sourdough loaves, bagels, focaccia bread.
Ooh, bagels and focaccia. Nice.
he was on it.
What is your favorite that you've made?
Sourdough bread for sure, just because the focaccia and everything is cool. Bagels are cool, like it's visually pleasing, but the sourdough bread takes, it literally takes like 7 hours to kind of prepare. It's like you make this sourdough starter, which is like a living, culture in this jar, and like you have to keep feeding this thing every single day, and it's almost like you have a pet now. It's like I feel like I have a science project. Every day I wake up, I'll feed this thing, and you could watch it expand and grow and then watch it fall again. But the process of bread is like you prepare the dough in the beginning, you have to wait an hour, and then every half hour for 6 hours, you got to do this series of like folds. So it kind of like kept me, disciplined to an extent. Like I was conscious of time. I was conscious of, the way I was doing things, and I was doing by trial and error. It's like I would make one loaf. I would see what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it. I would figure out different things, whether it would be messing with like the water content of the loaf, or how long I waited in between the folds, and I just fine-tuned it. So it was it was like every piece of it was like a different piece of art, and it's cool at the end because you have to make your own cuts in it and make it look super cool.
Yeah, sourdough is unique because it's like it's soft in the middle, but it's kind of got that hard outer shell, and then obviously it's got that like sour tinge to it. I think it's really good with sandwiches.
Yeah, man, it's like almost, it's like how people get real into like IPAs and stuff like that. You can have like them different flavors, and all the different like with bread, all the different textures, and you pull that loaf out of the oven and you like tap on it, and you could hear that like hollow thud, and you're like, man, that's going to be a good one.
Are you baking any desserts too? That's the real kicker for me.
I was baking desserts. I was making cookies. I was making cupcakes. Like I was getting heavy into it because there was nothing else to do. You couldn't go out. You couldn't go do anything. And I was like, what the hell am I going to do for 24 hours a day? So I was just baking for my wife. My wife was working. She was able to work from home. And I was just in the kitchen all day, just jamming music, listening to podcasts. And just kind of, I would find myself just literally standing by my oven for like, 6 hours at a time. I would just wait a half hour. Once that time would go off, I would do my series of folds. Then I would wrap it back up, and then I would wait another half hour and just jam into music and, keep it going.
It's a good life, man.
It's a good life. I would love to be a baker. Your house always smells good.
Cooking is a special pleasure for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And like, I'm not huge into baking, but I used to be vegan, and like midway through quarantine, like I stopped for health reasons. And when I discovered everything I could have again, like cinnamon rolls are my favorite dessert. So I went on a baking stint with those, and I made like 3 different batches.
You can't beat that.
That's awesome, man. Those cinnamon rolls, how good did they taste on their way back?
Oh my God. So good. Right. I just got to figure out how to make them softer. That's the only thing. Like when you first take them out, they're really good, and they stay good, but they just get harder. And I have to figure out how to make it work,
Man, we haven't even touched on his podcast yet. This is I told you, Chad's a good guy. The I'll Call You Right Back podcast, almost 100.
But we need to get him in contact with Mariah so she can sample his desserts. Professional dessert tasting.
Yeah, last episode, Mariah Wild is dubbed herself a professional dessert taster.
Oh wow!
She all around the spot, tasting desserts, with nearly 150 episodes. Man, you've hosted a who's who of people in Pittsburgh. Mikey and Big Bob, Rick Seaback, Selena Pompiani. There's some really good people, artists. Can you think back to when you first started? Did you think you would get here?
Yes, 100%.
Good. Love the mentality.
I did a podcast like 7 years ago in the city. Before they were like, being listened to by everyone. I got onto Joe Rogan. I got put onto him way early. And, like I said, he's like a cult leader almost. And I immediately was like, me and my buddies were like, we got to start a podcast. And then we started a podcast, and we were super young, and we didn't know what the hell we wanted to talk about. We didn't know how we were going to do it. And then, we would put these episodes out, and there would be no one to listen to them. So it was easy to let it dissolve as it did. And after that dissolved, I was like, I got to do another one, but everything got to be right. I'm very particular about things. And honestly, I had to wait until I came up with a name. The name took me the longest. And one day it just popped into my head, and I was like, all right, now's the time. And once I started that podcast and I put out that first episode, I remember reading online that the main reason that people unsubscribe or stop listening is because you skip a week, because you don't put out a podcast for a week. And I just, I took that to heart, and I was just like, I'm going to be in the mud, and I'm going to just claw out of it, and eventually I'm going to get to where I need to go. And I'm super happy with how everything has been progressing with it. I'm people use the word blessed, and I think that that's an overused word. But, I mean, there's so many people that are doing podcasts, and it's such a saturated world. Yeah. I don't know why mine is taking off like it is, but I'm blessed, I guess, or super happy, whatever you want to call it.
Well, I'm initially from New York, and I moved out here to do music. So, I mean, I think you definitely are blessed and all that, but I would say, Pittsburgh is one of the reasons why you're blowing up, because Pittsburgh is kind of an untapped market. Like, if you were to do a podcast where I was like rapping in New York, there are 100,000 of us out there doing that. And while there is a vast scene out here, it's just a lot of people don't really see what Pittsburgh has to offer. You only know if you're from here, or like me, you've moved here and you've gotten to experience the beauty and all that it is.
For sure.
I think a lot of it too is that discipline. When I heard him talk about that bread, and then hear him
I was
talk
not
about
trying to
no,
knock
not at all. But I think it's really interesting with Chad is I think if he could be a baker, if he could be a podcaster, whatever he would want to be, I think it dials back into that discipline of standing by the oven for 6 hours and folding that fucking sourdough every 30 minutes. And that's where like I thought it was super cool to see that transference from podcasting to baking, because he's got an Instagram for that bread. It's fucking beautiful, man. And to be able to see somebody take their skill set and maneuver it just a couple clicks in the other direction, whether it be from podcasting to bread, I bet if we gave Chad a tennis racket in 6 months, he'd whip our ass in tennis.
I don't know about it, but I mean, my thing is like, again, like, everything is so saturated now, whether you have a clothing brand, whether you're a rapper, whether you're an artist, a baker, dessert maker, whatever the hell you want to do, everything is saturated because like everyone is doing everything. And the only thing that's going to set you aside from someone else is the work that you put into it. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I know people are going to get discouraged, once they start a podcast. I know people are going to, do a couple episodes and be like, fuck this, like no one's listening. But I was like, it's the people that get through, that make it through that, them slumps in the beginning, and like, that allows you to get where you're going to be, because, you're starting at the bottom. Every single time you see them numbers pop up, whether it be 5 listeners, 10 listeners, 1,000 listeners, it's just cool to see it grow. And I don't know. I mean, I guess people don't have the same mindset. Some people don't, but my mindset always was like, I'm gonna outwork people. I'm not gonna like take shortcuts. Like I don't skip weeks. Even during the pandemic, my biggest fear during the pandemic was that, like my podcast, I talk to interesting people about what they do and how they got to that point in life. And during the pandemic, we didn't know what was going to go on. I wasn't able to have people in and interview people. So I was like, fuck, like I don't want to skip a week. Like I don't want there to just be like a lull in new episodes. So I was like, what could I do? So I just started to do research episodes where it would be, I did one on pyramid schemes. I did one on cults. I did one on, just, random shit. But I gave it 100%. Like I would put, 8 to 10 hours of research, like hardcore research into whatever I was doing. And whether it would be pyramid schemes, like that's a good example. I read for 8 hours about Arbonne, about all these things. I know I'm going to get some hate for it, but like, I read all about this shit, and I just, people could tell the work you put into it. I could take shortcuts and just talk about some random shit and just put an episode out there just to put it out there. But I want it to be quality. People could tell the quality of things, and it's just as easy for people to, stop listening to yours and start listening to someone else's. So I wanted people to, if people were going to give my podcast a shot, I wanted them to be impressed with what they were going to hear, and I would want them to, want to keep coming back.
Right on, man. Yeah, I think that's so cool to see. I think that's so like a transparent thing to be able to see people that are just like, I'm going to get through it. I'm going to win.
You got to.
Yeah. What made you decide, I know you said you're a talkative person, but that like you want to talk to people as opposed to doing something like a Two Bears, One Cave, which is like just Bert and Tom or just yourself?
My thing with that is like, like I grew up, my dad, always, my mom worked all the time. She was always there. It wasn't like she wasn't in my life or anything, but my dad was like a stay-at-home dad. And he would always take me to, flea markets. I would always be hanging out in garages with him and his friends. And, I was always like talking to adults whenever I was a little kid. And fortunate enough, these people that I would talk to, they used to talk to me like an adult. And I've always been fascinated with people, whether it be, what you do with the floating, or like what like Selena Pompiani does with, being working on Pittsburgh Today Live, or what Rick Seaback does. Like I've always been fascinated about how people chose their life and how they got to that point, because, everyone has their story. Like I work a 9-to-5 job, you work what you do what you do, and everyone's so like, stuck in their everyday life and their work. I wanted an excuse to be able to, talk to someone about, being a funeral director for 2 hours, because I can't go up to someone in a bar and be like, yeah, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I'm a funeral director. I embalm people. For me to just sit there and start grilling you with questions in a restaurant, like I would come off like a
weird,
freak, like a creep. And I wanted an excuse to be able to, kind of talk to people and kind of see why their life, took them to where it is, and what they did wrong and what they did right, and what happened that made them want to become a funeral director. Because like what type of people want to do that? Why do you want to, embalm people? Why do you want to, be the voice of Kennywood Memories? Why do you want to, be on 96.1 Kiss? And like, how did that happen? Like, how did you get to that point? And I've always just been fascinated by it.
That's awesome.
It is. I think one of the coolest things I admire about you is your featuring of small businesses. Recently, Quick Trip 4, great episode. I think that's one of the very interesting things that are happening now with the IV drips.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so Bo was, so Matt Christie at Streets on Carson. I don't know if you're familiar with them. So that's a great restaurant in Southside on Carson Street. I've talked to him about being a chef, how he got into that, and he told me, he was like, yo, my buddy Bo, he's opening this place called Quick Trip IV, and then he he is a good guy to talk to. And I, you know, a lot of the shit I have to give up to, like, you know, Rogan and his, like, you know, group of people. It's like the first time I heard about the IV rehydration therapy was through Rogan, was through Bert and through all them guys and through, like, you know, the UFC, and like that all stems from Rogan. And I just want to learn more about it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, people see, like we were talking about before we started recording, you know, I think that this is such a cool idea, you know, talking about floating, because some people might be overwhelmed, whether it be, you know, Quick Trip, whether it be, you know, someone at, you know, Pittsburgh Honey. You know, I just want people to be able, I want to be the platform that is consumable for people. I don't want it to be overwhelming. So I want people to be able to learn through just my regular relaxed conversation with people. And, you know, I curate the podcast, and I'm super specific about who I have on, because I don't have notebooks, you know, I don't have any template of the podcast. I talk to people that I want to talk to, because that's what's going to stem the best conversation. That's what's going to flow well. That's what's going to be natural. So if I see someone doing something that I'm interested in, you know, I'm definitely going to hit them up. And I was interested in the Quick Trip. I was interested in how that works, why that works the way it does. And, you know, Pittsburgh is behind in the times, you know, with the technology end of things. And I know Quick Trip is not technology, but that's a new thing. And that's been around forever, and, like, you know, not forever, but it's been around for years in, like, Vegas and, like, California and shit. So for people like that to open up a place in Pittsburgh, you know, a lot of people might see it and be interested, but they might not ever, like, initiate that experience, because they might be overwhelmed. A lot like with floating. Like, people might be, like, overwhelmed by thinking, like, you know, this isn't for me. This is for someone that, you know, is into, like, you know, yoga and into meditation and stuff like that. But I'm a regular ass dude who does regular ass shit, and this is just my life and my experience with it. So if people could hear me talk to someone about it, and, you know, like, I talked to Dave about this, and, like, we talked about, you know, how he got into this and everything. I just feel that, you know, I am a platform that could be a way to kind of spread all that information to the masses.
Definitely. And I mean, you're helping put Pittsburgh on too, you know, like you said, we're a little behind, you know, so now you have someone like the Quick Trip place that they bring a new thing. You're also a new thing. I mean, podcasting isn't new, but you're still coming up. Yeah. And you're both helping each other, and you're pushing it out further for more people to hear.
For sure.
And I'm curious. I like why you bring people on, but I think that your idea of, like, doing the pyramid schemes and the research stuff was amazing. Are you going to continue that after quarantine? Like, every now and then, or?
I don't know. I mean, like, that was kind of just like an idea to, you know, kind of fill time, you know, like to just fill weeks. And, you know, if I don't really backlog episodes. Like, I don't, like, you know, I don't have like 4 episodes already recorded, you know, ready to release. I kind of just, you know, go as it comes, because, like, I feel, you know, you said you do music, you know, if you have a song that you've had in your arsenal for like a year, you know, you might lose some feelings for that song because it's like older, you know what I mean? And you've had it just like kind of on the back burner for a while. So you might think, like, you know, oh, that's already, you know, that time has passed, that ship has sailed, that song's still there. But it's like, I want the most current conversation, you know, something crazy might happen in the world that, like, is, you know, bound to be brought up, you know, whether it be a pandemic or something like that. If I had like 6 weeks of podcasts recorded already, and then this pandemic shit happened, and I'm putting out episodes where it's just like we're talking all regular, you know, like nothing crazy is happening, and people are like, well, there's a fucking pandemic and the world's flipped over on its head, you know, I want the most, like, you know, up-to-date conversation. So I'm sure I'll be doing some research topics. A lot of people like them, dude. I was really surprised that I had the response with those that I did, because I didn't know if people were going to listen to me talk shit on pyramid schemes for 2 hours, but they did.
people want to hear everything. Like, there's this channel that I follow on YouTube called Stuff They Don't Want You to Know, and it's more like kind of like a conspiracy channel, but like, you know, pyramid schemes is one of those like off-brand things that like, if you're not stupid, you know that it'll fuck you over. But, you know, nobody knows. Like, most people don't know how it came about, like, why, who started. You know, I think, like, not everyone, but most people want to know some weird things like that. And it's cool to put it out there.
And it's like, you know, for people that don't, you know, I don't want this to be just bashing pyramid schemes. Like, you know, for people that are not, like, you know, caught up in a pyramid scheme, it's almost like, you know, blatant that, you know, that's some shady ass shit. You know what I mean? And you're like, how don't all these other people know that that's some shady ass shit?
Yep.
So I kind of like wanted to, you know, learn about that. You know, I did a whole episode on Nikola Tesla, and, you know, I was someone like growing up, like I never gave a shit in school. Like I was just there serving time. I just was there to play football, skateboard with my friends, and just like get by and do my time and get out. And I never like paid attention to shit. And now I'm like a sponge. Like all I want to do is learn about different shit. And you know, that was an excuse for me to really put in some hardcore research rather than just like, you know, me just sit there on my computer and just be like, oh, let me Google Nikola Tesla. You know, that gave me a reason to be like, you know, why is Nikola Tesla like who he is? Like, why was he such a big deal? Like, you know, why is the Tesla company named what it is? What does that name mean? And it was just a reason for me to kind of get deeper into it.
Yeah, you might have saved someone's life with the pyramid scheme episode, though.
I hope. I hope I did.
Someone's retirement is still intact.
I hope. It's a shame.
Dude.
Everyone thank Chad for the reason you did not enter with Arbonne.
I can't hate on Arbonne. Technically, they're not a pyramid scheme from what I
researched. What, MLM?
Yeah. Multi-level marketing. Get it right.
Correct, Troy.
Marketing.
That is correct.
I had so many people hit me up like, well, actually, it's not a pyramid scheme. And I'm just like, you're tripping.
Yeah.
You're tripping. That's basically what I was coming up with.
Chad, life's crazy, man. What's your current stress level at?
Not as much as it was. You know, whenever the pandemic started to come up, I was having a crazy amount of anxiety to the point where, like, you know, I remember the last day I was at work before I got laid off. I pulled into my driveway and I just like, I was in tears, like 100%. I was just overwhelmed. It was like March 26th or March 23rd. And I was just like, fuck, like what is going on in the world right now? Like, are my parents going to be all right? My brother was about to have a kid. I was like, is he going to be all right going to a hospital and having a kid? You know, I was like literally in tears. Like, I was just like, what is going to happen with the world? So my stress level was absolutely through the roof. But, you know, now I'm cruising. You know, I'm a glass half full guy. You know, like I'm absolutely an optimist, and I'm out here just like trying to, you know, see the good in the world, in this crazy fucked up world that we're in right now with all the politics and all this craziness. Like, I'm just trying to, you know, I'm just out here trying to function. That's what I'm doing. My stress level is not too crazy right now. I know with this float, my stress level is going to be, it might be even in the negative numbers now. I'd say I'm maybe at like a 3. I'm at a 3 right now, maybe. It might be like a negative, man. 1 or 2.
That's a good spot.
Let's get there.
Yeah, let's get Chad in the tank. When we come back, next time you hear him, it'll be after a 60-minute float.
I was getting some work done in there. It was, man.
Right on.
It feels great.
Well, I always like to ask this, and it's whatever you're comfortable sharing. Were you able to work through like a significant problem or something along those lines?
So I think that, so I'll be honest, a lot of the stuff that I was thinking about in the beginning, one was today's my anniversary and I'm here and my wife is at home. So I had some guilt in the beginning. And I was sitting there thinking about it, and you know, I was able to just, you know, I shifted it. I knew that everything was all right, and you know, I was thinking about that a lot in the beginning. But then I also started to think about, you know, just other small things that were creeping in, like, them toys that are laying on the ground. And I was just going around and trying to, figure out where everything's supposed to go. And, like we talked about yoga before, yoga's kind of hard to, clean up your mind while you're doing that because you're concentrating on not dying in there.
Very true.
While you're floating, I feel like that there was nothing else in there except for, felt like time stopped for a second, and it gives me a second to like kind of go over my priorities and what needed some work and what needed some, extra attention.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I think it was great. It was really good. And from my first experience to being in there to now, I felt more prepared, and I felt that I was able to utilize my time in there more.
More efficient. Awesome.
Yeah. So I would say, I got through. I was able to work through some stuff for sure.
Good. How do you feel like this could benefit like the everyday person?
Man, it's a loaded question because, every single person is living this life. And I use the train analogy because, I feel like it's the most relatable. It's like, every day we wake up, and as soon as people wake up, you're in this, go, go, go mode. Whether it's going to work, whether it's, taking care of your kids, whether it's taking care of pets, whether it's, doing whatever obligation you have to do. And you're so, it's almost like you're on autopilot, and you're trying to, navigate through your day and, just kind of get through the day. You don't really have time to just, really like get into your mind and really like touch on things you want to think about. And while you're, floating for an hour, there's nowhere else to go. There's nothing, there's nothing you're obligated to do. It's like if you are in that tank, you're there for an hour, and that's how I think of yoga. It's like I'm there for an hour. I try to turn off my brain to anything else and really just go through the things in my life that need to be, warranted a little bit more time. And I think that this is not an excuse for people, but this is a opportunity for people to have that time to spend a little bit more to focus on whatever else they need to focus on.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, Troy and I are both looking at each other like,
knock that out the park.
Right. There's certain people that this definitely attracts. How would you describe floating to somebody that, like you said before coming in, like have a little nervousness, that may be sitting on the fence, that may say like, I could really go either way. This maybe just isn't for me.
I think that probably, this is just an assumption, but I think that the thing about this that gets people, that could be, kind of stopping people from trying it out is like, people think that you're just like in this claustrophobic little tube, and you can't breathe or see or do anything like that. And I think that people might be overwhelmed by the thought of that because, the first thing people do is, whenever they're curious about something, they Google something, and they look at pictures, and they read other people's thoughts about it, and they it's almost like WebMDing your symptoms. You don't really know what you're reading.
It's dangerous.
But you're reading other people's thoughts, and whether it be positive or negative, it's not your experience.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think people might be hesitant to like get into, a tank that is pitch black, and they might think that it's going to be, super claustrophobic. But with you not being able to, with you not having any light in there, that whole idea of claustrophobia kind of, evaporates because you can't see the walls that are closing in on you. You can't see the tight space that you're in. And I think with the temperature of the water in there being, very similar to your body and having all the salt in there and you being buoyant, it's like you're floating in a void. And there's nothing that's interfering with your senses. It's like you're not thinking of laying on your body. You're not thinking of if you're laying on a bed, you could feel you're laying on your bed. But if you're in this tank, you're floating and nothing is around you and there's no interfering whatsoever. And I think that that's what's overwhelming in the beginning because you're you could hear your heart thumping and you could hear your breath and you could hear everything inside your body. If your stomach makes a noise, if your fingers crack or something like that, you could feel it and you could hear it. But, that tank kind of, if you can get past the idea of getting in such a terrestrial idea of something that you're not used to, there's some opportunities to, really experience something that you've never felt before.
Yeah.
No one's ever felt what you could sit in a pitch black room, but whether you're laying on a couch or not, you could still feel those cushions under you. You could still feel those beds under you. You could still feel the grass under you if you're laying outside. But this, you get in there and you're just, I don't know, you're just floating in nothing, and I think that once people can get past that first, kind of a weird feeling, I think that people could really, I think people will be surprised with how good it is.
Well, that's why I thought it was so cool to have you come through because this is your second float.
Yes.
I mean, even as open-minded as you are, of all the folks we see, I mean, no matter what, it is weird. It is weird.
Yeah,
and to give it a second time, that's when you get past that quick hump real quick. After your first session, it's well, now I know the routine. Now I know how to shower. Now I know I can lock the door. I know that the tank door opens and closes as I see fit. And the results, if you just go in and do it, you'll feel good after the first one. But that second one, man, that's really when people get their arms around okay, that weirdness isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
Now I can enjoy that hour much more.
I agree with that for sure because, like you said, people might think, I talked to someone about it. I told them that I was going to be coming to do this, and they were like, what do you mean it's like a tank you get into? And I was trying to explain it, and they're like, I don't know about being closed in this area, but it's not I didn't feel, I've never felt unsafe. I've only done this twice, but I don't feel unsafe because you see what it is. There's just a door. Once you're in there, it's just an arm's length away. If you get overwhelmed, you can push it open. The shower is the greatest thing in the world. And the soap in the shower is that's just the cherry on top of it all.
Right on.
It's you have that great smell, you have that great everything, and it's just a very, very warm, welcoming environment. And once you can get past that idea, it's anything that you've never done before. You have to take that initial step to be able to, get that ball rolling and get that experience initiated.
So now that you've finished for the evening, I know it's your anniversary, you're going to go spend time with your wife, but do you feel, whether it be baking, biking, or podcasting, any creative drive or any push to do something?
I don't necessarily feel a creative drive to have to, kind of go and do something. I feel motivated because, I feel refreshed and I feel organized. I think organization is what the biggest benefit of this is, because you don't really have, we were talking, people are just, whenever I say people are overwhelmed every day with life, I don't necessarily mean overwhelmed you can't handle it. I mean it's overwhelming because, you got to drive to work, you got to deal with traffic, you got to deal with who's making dinner, you got to deal with, washing clothes. And it's just like, everyone has these obligations and everyone has these like things that need to be done. And, whether it be super overwhelming or whether it just be something that needs to be done, like this is an opportunity where, nothing needs to be done right now except for, trying to work on what you need to work on. So I don't necessarily feel like I have to go home and, go record an episode or go edit an episode, but I feel motivated that, my mind is in a better place for the next time I do go record an episode. The next time I do, go do something that I need to be done. I just feel that there's less baggage on me, that there's less things that I have to worry about in the back of my mind while I'm trying to execute what I want to execute.
That's an amazing answer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely relatable.
Right on. Is there anything you want to plug for the people?
I think that, like everything, it's worth it to take a chance and explore something that you are not familiar with, because, it's all growth. I turned 30 in June, and, before, when you're 21, 20, 19, you feel like you're invincible. You feel like that nothing will happen. You could eat whatever you want, get as fucked up as you want, do whatever you want to do, stay up all night. But you never think that, there's any sort of like mortality. And I'm not saying I feel like I'm going to die or I feel like I'm old, but I feel like that I'm more conscious of my well-being, because the better I feel every day and the better I take care of my life, the easier it's going to run. It's like, the better fuel you put inside yourself, whether it be, actual tangible, food or drink, the better care you take of yourself. Like I started to try to do, kind of different things. I tried like acupuncture recently, and I tried cupping recently.
I want to try both of those so bad.
It was cool because, like, it's something that I've always seen it in movies, and I've always seen people have done it, and I've always been super curious about it. But it's like, I'm 30, and it's like, why not try to do it? It's not going to do anything negative to me. It's just going to benefit my life. And I think that floating is, up there with anything that you could do to benefit for your life. And I think that you should just give it a try if you've been thinking about it. What's the worst that could happen?
You're the first guest to leave the podcast with such like a positive message. You didn't even plug yourself or your own podcast. You were just like, break out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, dude, because that's what it is. It's like, anyone that comes on my podcast, a lot of the people that I talk to, excuse me, but some of the people that I talk to, like, they've never did an interview. They've never, like, had someone grill them about what they do for 2 hours. I do a long form podcast. A lot of people try to keep their episodes short. They just want like the Spark Notes version of things. But I think it's so important for me to, not put any time constraints on my podcast, because, I want to get deep into people, because, I feel that some of the podcasts that I'm a big fan of, they might be just an hour long. And by the time I get to like 45 minutes, that's whenever the conversation really starts to go. That's whenever like you really start like, kind of get that fire burning, and like, it's starting to like, starting to rip a little bit better. And you're just starting to, get to the things you want to talk to. So I think that, I just think that it's beneficial, and I think that it's important to, kind of take the time for yourself. I think people might take, it's not, at first I thought it was selfish, like I always had like the idea of like, am I being selfish whenever I do the things that I want to do, whether it's hang out with my friends or, you know, go see what I want to go see or go do what I want to do. And, you know, I would have a time to think that, you know, is that selfish of me to like not spend more time doing, you know, the obligations that I have, but it's just like, it's better for my life. And I feel that people could really benefit from this, and people could really, you know, really just take the time to, you know, just work on yourself. You know, why not? We only have this one life, you know?
Yep. I mean, I think that's the purpose, is to keep being better you every single day.
I agree.
On that note, Troy, anything for the people?
Man, Chad said it all.
I have nothing left. He unloaded both barrels on us.
I'm glad that you guys had a good experience with my rambling.
Oh, it was amazing.
If you haven't already, please give a listen. I'll Call You Right Back is one of the best podcasts. You can hear Chad's comforting voice talk to all cool people throughout the city of Pittsburgh, and take a dive back through the archives. Check out some of those episodes that he talked about, the conspiracy theories, the multi-level marketing. Troy is the proper word, not
Yes.
pyramid scheme, sir. There are no pyramid schemes. It's multi-level marketing.
Gotcha.
If
I have been learned.
You have been learnt. If you sound like you would have a good time with a float, hop over to scheduleyourfloat.com. Get yourself right with a 60 or 90-minute float. And on that note, another great episode. Thank you so much for coming through, Chad.
Thanks for having me, guys.